Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email tmosso@thewatchbox.com, the new direct service line from you to me and my crew for watches you see here on Watchbox Reviews, including this rare vintage Omega Speedmaster Professional Pre-Moon, reference 105.012-64. This is a true vintage timepiece for those who aren't looking for a modern watch, but rather a historically evocative, historically intact and original, and historically significant reference from Omega. Now this watch, the 105.012-64, is one of the scarcer subspecies of the 105.012, and this was the first generation of Speedmaster Professional. I'll talk about what that means in terms of size first. Stainless steel, this watch likely manufactured in 1964, and probably the second half of 1964 because of the tritium dial markings. It is exactly as you would expect with a modern moon watch, because the beveled lyre style lugs, the asymmetrical case with the shear guards for the crown and pushers, and the 42mm size arrived with this generation of the watch. Now the timepiece is generally orthodox in terms of size, 42mm in diameter, 13.9mm thick with the Hesselite thermoplastic, and 47.1mm from lug to lug with a 20mm spacing between the lugs. So all of your modern moon watch bracelets and straps are probably going to work on this one, as long as there's not a conforming end piece. The timepiece, of course, is fitted with a modern Omega factory strap. This is not period correct, but as you can see, it is a brand new Omega factory strap, so it is brand correct. Calfskin on the top, calfskin on the bottom, butter soft with shear-sided construction and a binding stitch. You can see the layers of leather. Likewise, we have a vintage-inspired modern-day Omega pin buckle. This too is an Omega factory part, so everything is Omega. As you can see, this is not a watch in mint condition. This is an historical survivor. You can still see the satin finish of the case and the polish of the bevels in contrast, but this is a watch that's been worn, and this is a watch that's been refinished a couple of times. You will note that it features the correct original Omega crown right there, and the crown is 7mm. I measured it, so it is also model correct to the 105.012-64. 7mm vintage Omega crown. You could see the tachymeter, likewise base 500. It has the original correct aluminum insert. You can see the dot over 90, the base 500 dot over 90, correct to the watch, and again, not in mint condition, but a survivor like everything else you see here. The dial, likewise, is period correct and correct in detail. Underneath an Omega factory plexiglass, you can see the little Omega logo over the cannon pinion at center. It's faint, but it's there. The dial, I have to say, is the best preserved part of this watch, which is good for a vintage guy, because that's where a lot of the value is held. You can see the faded original tritium, and you can also see that the matte dial base, I'll do my best to remove my fingerprints, has survived more or less unmolested, and as a pre-moon caliber 321 watch, you can see it has both the vintage logo applique rather than printed, and the vintage Omega marquee written out just below that. Now the hands have been preserved, but as you can see, the original tritium has fallen by the wayside. They do feature hollows on their face, so they are correct white varnished, but the tritium of the hour and minute hand, that's gone. It was creating debris on the dial at some point in the watch's life, and it was correctly decided to preserve the original material but remove the offending loose tritium. Now you will see the seconds hand still has its original tritium insert. Okay, underneath this tritium dial, which you can see signed T as most of the second half of 1964 on Speedy Pros were. All of that with a double-stepped case back. As you can see, it has that double kink in it. It's angled once and then angled again with the image of the hippocampus. It's original, but as I mentioned, this watch has been worn and likely refinished a few times in its career. Underneath, though, the movement is in outstanding condition, and it's the legendary Lemania 2310 Bausch-based Omega 321, a movement with its origins in the early 1940s, column wheel lateral clutch, both of which retain excellent feel and sound. There's a crisp to this mechanism that's missing in early caliber 861 and even some of the first 1861 moon watches. Have a listen against the mic. As you can hear, that is sharp and vocal. It beats away at a stately and traditional 18,000 vibrations per hour, so it's a slower beat rate than the 861. It is 17 joules, manual wind, 44-hour power reserve. column wheel lateral clutch, and though the original 10512 was a bit of a breakthrough watch with 50-meter water resistance, you can see the instantaneous jump of the old 321 right there. This is not a watch you ever want to submerge. Vintage watches need to be retired from the surf regardless of how they were originally spec'd. A few interesting things to note about this watch. It features a Hugen & Frere case. So Hugen & Frere of Lille, Switzerland was the fabricator for the case, and you'll see if you remove the case back that it has both the reference number and the Hugen & Frere signature. The timepiece in good condition as a survivor, though not a timepiece that you would call a time capsule or museum piece. It is a very collectible caliber 321 pre-moon vintage Speedmaster Professional from the generation of the 105012 that did actually go to the moon. So a pre-moon watch in the end winds up being the only true moon-walked Omega Speedmaster. So this is one for the collection, one for the pantheon, one might even say. See it? Make it yours on the Watchbox. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com.